Hello everybody, hope you're all okay. In 1975, when I was born in my local hospital, really having 6 toes on my left foot wasn't really known about, and why I had sit down, you. She's all new to this, bless her, she's only young. She had 6 toes on one foot. They didn't really know what was happening and why I'd got 6 toes on one foot, and they just thought, oh, that's a normal thing. Apart from my mother, Jo, saying to the doctors when she was finally told by my godmother, who now lives in New Zealand, she'd gone from, I don't know if any, from quite a short distance on a bus to the Royal Infirmary at Leicester, and she ended up miles, and by the time she went to visit my mum in the hospital, she said to me, you don't know she's got 6 toes. My mum said to the doctors, can't you count beyond 5? You're supposed to check she's got 10 toes and 10 fingers, not 11. But as childhood went on, I had a normal childhood. Nothing appeared really as my sight problems or anything like that. It was more till I got to the age of 13, because I've always had a lot of allergies, but this allergy seemed to protect my immune system. And it weren't till I got to 13 that I had mumps, severe mumps, chicken pox, and I also had it on my eyes, but I started to wear glasses, and it was starting to notice that my eyesight was getting worse. The last year of primary school, the first year of secondary school, they found out, unfortunately, that my left eye was short-sighted, my right eye was long-sighted. Not helpful when you try and play netball, tennis, or anything like that. So I just pretended and stood at the back of the wall. And don't you lot laugh at the back when I'm going to say this. At those days, I was quite a shy child. Yes, I know who's laughing. I know that is laughing. Oh, be quiet, you lot. They know, they don't. They're laughing because they think that's how I am now, is how I've always been, but it's not. I was a very quiet person. I didn't really speak to many people. I had got a few friends, but not many. And I always went out and about, driven places, protected by my mum and dad, but still then we weren't quite sure what was going on and what was happening. So I say when it came to sports, it was secondary school, I just stayed at the back of the wall. They sort of said, Sarah, it's time to come forward and pretend to hit it and stuff like that. So I just went to all mainstream school, went to do my GCSEs, was struggling to do the overhead projector, blackboard, and it was getting harder and harder. I managed to do my GCSEs, and then I thought, I went to do what is called, I don't know what it's called these days, but in them days, in the 89, 90, it was called BTEC First in Caring. So I thought there wasn't really any courses in veterinary nurses or anything like that. So I thought, oh, I'll do this BTEC First in Caring for childcare. I was fine. I went through that. Things were getting worse and worse. And then I went to go and do my nursery nursing course. They didn't really understand what I was going through and how I was struggling. I did have somebody from the RNIB outreach. They were quite supportive, they were helpful on them early days of trying to get me benefits and stuff like that. But it wasn't until I did my disability option that it all seemed to light bulb moment. The Sunday came, I can't remember his now, it's such a long time ago now, because I was 16, it's a while ago now. He started to talk about sight loss, and he came from Loughborough College, the RNIB Loughborough College, which unfortunately is no longer there. I think the site is, but I think that's been used as something else. And he sort of talked about night blindness and sight loss, and I'm thinking, well, this all sounds like me. So he says to me, would you like to come to Loughborough College? Would I like to do these tests on you to see what's going on? And as I called it then, and I still do, even though I still don't have the field of vision test, it's like the upside down looking like you're putting your head in a sink, isn't it, really, to do the field of vision test? So I had that done and did all the different tests, had the electrodes stuck to me and all things like that. And he says, I want a second opinion, but I think you've got retinitis pigmentosa because you've got the night blindness. And before that, unfortunately, I'd been on a holiday with my parents and another family. I'd walked into a white wall. Ouch, yes, I know. And I also then find out the results. And then my grandmother saw this consultant, and my mum, in her wisdom, thought, oh, because they're helping somebody in their 80s or the 70s, that consultant will be fine for somebody for me. No, because he wasn't used to dealing with a 18-year-old or 23-year-old that by that time was starting to know her own mind and her own voice and sort of knew in her own mind what they wanted to happen. But anyways, This consultant said, oh, let me do all the tests. You've definitely got retinitis pigmentosa. He just said, oh, you're going blind. Just go off. Just go live the life you can the best. I don't think you're going to achieve much. How little did he know, but there you go. Yeah. Shut up, Zimbler. Love you really, but there you go. Anyway, so he said that, and it was like I said earlier, Adam was speaking earlier, for my parents, it's sort of a big chord with me, because my mum and dad, sit down here, they thought it very upsetting. They thought it was like, what's going to happen now? They were cried, they discussed what's going to happen with me. It's terrible. You know, sight's a very bad thing to happen. What's she going to do in life? So I carried on as much as I possibly could with my nursery nursing. I did actually qualify as a nursery nurse and started working. I then went back to doing placements for quite some while, and then my first job was actually working in a nursery that was in the YMCA opposite the Leicester station. When we played with the kids, it was in a gym, or you played on top of the roof. Yes, I don't think you'd be allowed to do that now, would you really? But they didn't think of that one then, in 1993, but there you go. So I did that for a while. Then I went and worked in, was a community sort of nursery, preschool sort of thing. And I did that as much as I possibly can. And unfortunately, the Equality Act hadn't been changed, and the rules hadn't been changed. So they thought by putting a few lights outside, painting the walls white inside, oh, that would be good enough, that would be helpful enough. No. So they said, we don't think, our insurance says we can't insure you anymore, you can't work with children. Now, I was upset, yes, because I'd done all that training. I had had difficulties. I had done placements in different terraced houses that were very dark, and I didn't get much support. But I had worked, I had done the best I could, and I'd enjoyed it for the time I did it, because I did it from the 2-year-olds up to about 5 years old on the different jobs and placements that I did, and I really did enjoy it. So I was angry, and I'm thinking, how you can treat me like this? I've got sight loss, not anything else. You should be supporting me, should help me carry on to work, not just leaving me to one side. So I went to sign on to do job centre and that sort of thing. And always been interesting from year dot about aromatherapy, reflexology, history, oils, and massage and all that sort of thing. So what you did was, after signing on for don't know how many months, I can't remember now, you had to then go and do different options. I said, well, what do you fancy doing? He says, well, I fancy doing aromatherapy, reflexology. Well, luckily, the gentleman I spoke to knew the head of college of Leicester College, which is next to the Leicester Tigers. Yes. Shut up. Yeah, no, it's not. It's rugby union, actually. But then, anyways, he sort of got in touch with the principal that was in charge of the college, and said, but the only downside was I had to start what was originally a 2-year course. So I did the last year of that course, and then till I could start in the September, because I had to start straight away, of the first year course of what I was going to do. So I learnt anatomy and physiology, reflexology, Indian head, 40 Latin names of aromatherapy oils. They said to me, well, this is good, because you don't have to blindfold on. You can do the blind test, Sarah. What do you think this is? Well, it smells like toilet cleaner. It was actually Roman chamomile. Anyway, so I did, it must have been lots of things we did. It was a year, so we fitted in. It was a part-time course, but it was classed as a full-time course. So I did that 3 days a week, but also we had a salon set up, so it was like a salon, so you could do it like that. And I really enjoyed it, and I did that. And then the next year, I also did an advanced course, but in the meantime, I started to feel a bit unwell, and I wondered whether it was my thyroid, it was asthma, and other things coming to the forefront, even more than what it'd done previously. And I was about, 21, 22, 23, because by that time I'd told I wanted to be registered blind, which I had been. So I was about 24. And at this point, I could still see print, but it was getting less and less and less. So you take it from the previous college that I went to under the same name. I had no support, no help, put into placements in complete dark. Whereas this college, They made sure I wore trainers because I didn't feel it was safe to be wearing clogs. They helped me to do contrast colours on the trolleys, on the couches. They helped me to get around. They put everything in big, larger print. They gave me printouts of all the overhead projectors. They did anything they could possible to help, and they need to do placements to help me out with that as well. I was able to mix oils already up in pump bottles, and they sort of at my side and helped me out, and the other students helped me out as well. There was other people there of different disabilities, but I was the only person that was visually impaired, registered blind, that did that course. It should have been with the diploma, the holistic diploma, including nutrition as well, was 1 year, and the advanced was 1 year, but when I kept being ill as well, it took a bit longer, and it took me 3 years instead. But even so, I qualified, and then they said, what would you like to do next? Oh, well, not sure whether there's anywhere nearby that will actually take me on as being a member of staff the salon, but I was still doing parts of my actual coursework and doing case studies and things like that, because there was always a lot of people wanting to put their hand up and saying, yes, please, yes, I'd like to be a case study, because, you know, do like 6 or 8 massages or reflexology or stuff like that. And by that point, I'd learned like 80 Latin names of oils. No, you cannot always remember all of them, thank goodness, because none of them you don't really want to remember. Some you do, some you carry on using, some you don't. Anyways, so they said, well, what would you like to do? Well, perhaps set up my own business. So they helped me support, and then when I finally qualified, and that sort of thing, and I was having ideas and doing placements and things, what would happen. I didn't get much support at this time, nor did my mum or my dad or the friends and family, like my second mum that normally comes to my clinics with me. Anything. When it was retinitis pigmentosa or nothing, there was nothing for anybody younger age living in a small village in Narborough in Leicestershire. So the majority of the time, I would go out, they'd pick me up in a car, I'd be dropped off to college, or I'd get the bus, or if I'm going out at night time, I'd be dropped off. I'd meet with my friends, but come back again, and they'd pick me up and drop me off. And that's how it happened. And I'd go out with me mum's friends and things like that. And then I did have a surprise birthday party, but having really good hearing, I had to stick my fingers in my ears and go la la la, because I was taking Paphos for 10 days, but there you go. So it was not really, I did have friends and whatever, do stuff at college, but outside of college it was still being driven here, there and everywhere, and I wasn't really getting much independence at that point, apart from going to college and doing the placements. So after I qualified, I went back on to signing on again, but then after that you could go on to another option, which was self-employed option, and I met this lovely lady called Diane Ford, and so if you can come on the self-employment option, you can do it for so many weeks, see how you feel. And it was run by a lady called Fern Trading, and the lady Debbie Fern, she set it up by one single mum, £1, and she was a multi-millionaire by this point. And we did like the 6 weeks, and says at the end of it, you're going to write a business plan, and you're going to go in front of this panel at the Guildhall to see if you can get a grant and loan from the Prince's Trust. Now, that was the most nerve-wracking thing I've ever had to do. Sit there in this room and people are arguing and thinking, oh my God, what have I got to go in front of these people to get a grant and get a loan to set up my own business? And they said, don't worry about it. So I told them a business plan and said I wanted to set up a business for holistic therapies called Hands, Body and Soul, but it was SOLE, soles of the feet. And my emblem was a sole of foot with the initials HS. I had to think of that one. HBS, thank you, I nearly did the other way around then. They said yes, and what's your business plan and what's your goal for 1 year, 3 years and things like that. So I went and did it. The nerve-wracking I think it was about 3 weeks. And then they rang me up to say, yes, we're glad to offer you a loan and a grant. And at this point in 2003, we got plans drawn to bring the garage forward, and they build a therapy room for me and a shed. By the way, that was for my dad for his fishing stuff. But a salon room, so therapy room, so I could have my own little room and I could go and do my treatments out there. In the long run, that was a lovely way of doing it, but I know my mum was trying to think of me and not think that any salons was going to take me on. And how was I going to cope? How was I going to work in that sort of environment? Were they going to help to set stuff out? My family was, in some ways, and actually no, I'll correct that, a lot of ways, wrapping me up in cotton wool. But I got people to build it, and then we set up in the February of 2003. The therapy room was finished, but then with the money we got for the Prince's Trust, we got the equipment, we got the oils and all the stuff and all the advertising and everything like that. At this point, we went round putting leaflets through doors, advertising, and putting everything through everything. And off I went. Now, all I can say is, when I started, right, I think it's a lot better these days to get the gist that holistic therapies is a lot different to waxing, to beauty. Over the years, I've met some wonderful people. Other times, I've got to put it politely, weird people is how I'll put it. Yes, weird people, and they've tried it on. But luckily at the time, I got a 40-kilo pet golden retriever standing outside, and it'd bark and whatever. But you just had to be careful, and you had to be dodgy. Lots of dodgy people out there that tried it on, and we tried it the best we can because it was a person by myself, even though somebody was in the house all the time. But you just had to be careful. But so people would ring up and they'd say, "Oh, hello, do you do such a..." No, no, only do this, only do that. But over 18 years of doing my own business, I must admit I've met quite a lot of nice people. I'm going to different, was it 2003, I won Entrepreneur of the Year, the first year, the second year I was in business. Because they say you have a mentor, and they say the hardest year is the first year, and a lot of businesses don't make it after that first year. But when the third year come, I thought, oh, this is not too bad, and then 5 and 10 and 18, but there you go. This award ceremony, I met Sally Gunnell, and at that time she had all her medals with her, and I think she just about had her third child, so she said she couldn't run after us if we tried to nick her gold medals. But she was a very nice lady, and met some of the rugby players, and my mum's got this knack of always either walking into or bouncing off rugby players. But there you go, Neil Back was at and all sorts of things, so there's different people I've met over the years. And I've been watching the International Women's Day. It's called Leicester Hair Day, and you do like different events. You do like workshops, and I did one year. And I'm in the corporate box at Walker Stadium, and I'm doing a reflexology thing. And I used to always go up the toes and stretch the toes. And this lady said, "Can I ask a question?" I said, "Of course you can." She says, "When you've ever done that, you ever pulled anybody's toes off?" See what I mean by silly people asking silly questions? There you go. But no, it's been a nice business to have. I've done to different local events, national events at Stoneleigh, agricultural show, doing taster sessions. I've done talks. I've done all sorts of things. So it's been really, really good. And during that time, I got more involved with my local blind society, Vista. And I started going to book group, I started going to pottery and things like that. And they, was it 2009? Yeah, 2009, they went and did a open day for guide dogs. So I went along. At one side I've got my mum, the other side I've got Sheila as my second mum. They play this video, this chap, I think his name's Yusuf, and he had his guide dog, and I looked, and there's my mum in tears, and there's Sheila in tears. For oh, flipping heck. Anyways, so they said, oh, you can have a trial run. So they said, yes, you can either try with Gary or Rita. For flipping heck, what names to have for guide dogs. Anyway, so I walked up and down the path, and that I knew that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have a guide dog. But because like I said previously, I said I went through a consultant's route and private. I never went to see my consultant. I never went to see a consultant at the hospital, so I never saw the eclos. I never got the information for the Blind Society or for long cane training or mobility or rehab at a young age. So it weren't until I'd been quite a while doing the different levels of the guide dogs application forms, and one including is a empty handle walk going through your village. But the thing is though, I've got my instructor who's doing his university course, me that's holding the empty handle, his immediate boss and the big boss. So I'm going through my village, all four of us, and I'm saying steady to an empty handle. And these two ladies going, hey, what are you doing that for? Doesn't matter, I've got to, it's okay, I said, you just have to do it to make sure that you know you're going to be right. If they turn left, you go with the handle left, and if you go right, they go right, you go right, sort of thing. So I did all that, and then said, well, we need to see you go out and about. I said, well, I've never done any cane training, no, nothing. She says, well, you need to do cane training. I was lucky. The gentleman that was doing my training and doing my application actually knew one of the ladies that did the rehabilitation, and vice versa. Normally, you'd only get about 6 months, 8 months a year. She was told to do cane training for 2 routes, one to my village shop, one to a bus or on the train or something like that. She said, no way. She said, I'm doing everything and anything that you need, so as soon as that dog appears, you can go off and you can do it. So she did training me for 2 years. By this point, they said, oh yes, you're on the waiting list, and you can be on what they called in them days, it's not the same anymore, you don't do priority 1. But every time I went to the top of the list, they thought they'd got a dog and they hadn't got a dog. But everything I learned was like going on buses, going on trains, you name it, we did it, went into shops. And we did have fun together, I must admit, because I think half the time she'd forgotten I got very good hearing. And she got one of the old-fashioned purses with the big clasps on, and she'd hide somewhere and shut her purse. And I'd say, hello, Chris, and she'd go, oh, you know I'm here. I said, yes, I know you're there. And at times she'd follow me through the city centre. She'd say, can't chat, I'm not stalking that lady, she knows I'm behind her. I'm just following her to do a cane training. But I did everything and anything, and I just fell on my feet with the right person at the right time for 2 years. And I waited 2.5 years, which actually is quite short these days for a guide dog, really, but ayo. So at 2.5 years after waiting, and by this time, as I said, I was involved more of going on the train, going on buses, going to groups, going on holidays to Windermere, going to Teignmouth, doing horse riding, doing zip wiring, doing sailing. Yes, I've gone from the very quiet, very not talking much, not doing much, to doing everything and anything. It gets worse in a minute. I do more, that's what I mean. I do more in a bit. So they said, oh, we think we've got a match. So what they have to do is you give them the dog, said, we want you to take a walk around the village. She's a very big dog, Kiki. I had her at 16 months old. It was a match. And then I started my training. Unfortunately, when I started my training, you remember when it was like 10 years ago, the 21st of May, we were hotter than Hawaii. Yes, that's when I had to start. But luckily, I'd got a golden retriever. But the lady in the afternoon had got a black dog that obviously was sweltering, but even a golden retriever was sweltering. So we did it 2 or 3 times a day. A week. We did it twice a day, but also so many days a week. And we did it on buses. We did it all around my local out-of-town shopping centre in the town, on trains. We had fun because at one point they didn't let us off the train in time, so we had to go to the next village and wait an hour to come back. And we got sandwiches, and you always have to have a laugh and a joke, even though you're instructor or you're trainer and whatever. But so that happened. So that all happened in 2010, the cane training. Kiki came in 2012, and then we started. I did all the 5. Well, it should have been 5. About 3 weeks, 3 weeks or 4 weeks training. I qualified in about 10 days because of all the. By the way, it's not supposed to happen like that. It's because of all the cane training that I did. As soon as she came along, I knew that it was meant to be. And I just put the harness on for the first time once I'd qualified, went out the gate. I'm not going to say the word because it will mostly set all the other guide dogs off in this room. And I just held my head high because with a cane it was lovely, it gave me my independence, but I had to look down more. I was concentrating more, I was tired more. But with Kiki, I went and I just said them words, off I went around the village, got on a bus, got on a train, and that was it. I knew it was meant to be. And after that, I went to this event. I just not long qualified, went all the way from Leicester Station, all the way to Bognor Regis. That was the first trip we ever did. And then we went on the train, I went to all sorts of things, and I started to do more volunteering for my local guide dog society, and also for campaigning, and also for speaking for guide dogs, and also for doing all sorts of things. But also, I then took over the running of the book group. I decided to set up a tech group, and then we did more trips away, more sailing, more zip wiring. And then the year later, after I qualified, I decided to raise money for guide dogs. I'd do a tandem skydive and jump out of a plane at 13,000 feet. I really enjoyed it. I'd like to do it again, actually, but you have to now, when you're getting nearer to 50, you have to have a medical, but anyways. But I really enjoyed it. The only problem, my family thought it was brilliant. For the next 4 days, I couldn't hear a thing. I raised £1,500, but he said it was wonderful. When the parachute was open, he let me steer the parachute, and he said, "You're the only one that's actually put your feet down on the floor and not sat on your bum when you've landed, because you can't see. You've just instinctively put your feet down." But he was 6 foot something, and I'm 5 foot. And he shouted at me because he didn't instruct me and put my feet completely under the plane to go out. So I've done that, and I've also done about 4 or 5 years ago, I did the last quarter of the Isle of Wight Challenge, which is where you walk and you do 26 kilometres it was, and all the coastal roads. And at one point I'm looking over the cliff into the sea at the Isle of Wight, the Solent, which was quite fun to do. The next few days couldn't walk much, but again raising money for guide dogs. And it was me and my friend, both registered blind, visually impaired, with 2 guide dogs, doing the 26 kilometres with no help, but just the pair of us helping each other. But as I say, when I got to my 40th birthday, after 18 years of doing my therapy business, it was too much. My muscles were beginning to ache and begin to hurt, so I had to retire at the age of 42. But at this, my friend Sheila, because I'd had so many years of not knowing what was going on, she said, "Oh, go back to my opticians and we'll get you back to the hospital." I was very lucky that I got a consultant that was a younger consultant. And he says, "I don't think you feel like you think what you've been diagnosed with all your life is actually what you think you've got." And he says, "Would you like to have genetic testing?" And I said, "Yes, please, I would, because I'd like to know what's really going on." And he did that and had genetic testing, and it all went ahead. And I went to bed, I can't remember what year it was, unfortunately, I can't tell you that, but anyways. So I went to Sheila with Kiki to my first clinic. Had all the test bloods done, the height and everything done. Went to see the ophthalmologist, and she looked at the back of my eyes and says, "I'm 90% sure you've got BBS 1. And I must have done some sort of micro movement with my eyes or my shoulders or whatever. And she says, "That's the news you've been wanting to hear all your life." Says, "You've never thought it was RP, have you?" I said, No. So that was the news I'd been wanting to hear, all like we said. And Sheila said, "Well, I never really thought it was RP, but that's what Sarah was told at 16, and then you just go along, you plod along, and then from there I've had all this more support, all these people helping me. I went to the social weekend and met all those lovely people at the rowdy lot at the back. The first year I went, we got this mutual friend, and we're going, "Hello, are you Sarah? I've heard all about you. Are you Rachel? Yeah, I've heard about you." And we met all these people and just got on and went off and do holidays, go theatre, go to Western Supermare, like I've just been recently with this one. But I've done all sorts of things, and it's really good life. But 9 years ago, I went to the first thing to do, the NFB UK weekend at Eastbourne, and it was to do with shared space. And I thought, well, this sounds interesting. So we campaigned against shared space, and I thought, how can I get more involved? And in Leicester, I don't know if you've heard Jubilee Square, that lovely thing that was built, you know, useless thing, 4 squares, that's nobody can do anything on, and you walk straight into the road. And I thought, this is definitely what's happening at Leicester. How can I get more involved? So the other lady that I normally do, and the other group of us that do it, said, we can get more involved, let's have a look what's happening in Leicester. And I said, well, this out Jubilee Square. And I said, it's no good, I'm just walking straight into the road. And excuse me, she's supposed to, she's as a guide dog's gone from curb to curb. She hasn't got a clue, she's walking straight into the road. And also at this time, because I go from the train station and I walked a main crossing and I walked 6 side streets and you get to a crossing. Well, it did have a controlled crossing there. It did have tactile there. It did have a curb there. Well, the mayor and the city council and their instrument wisdom decided to take all that away. So I have to stand there for 35 minutes, wait for somebody to help us, or try and cross the road myself. What fun that is not. And again, if I don't haul, like originally Kiki or her back, she'll walk straight into the road. So I feel I need to do something about this. This is not right. So that's how I started out. But some politicians and media people think, wish you never bothered. Anyways, so I went also to Westminster Hall to talk to Alberta Costa about the changes to ESA. I also went with Claire Lawrence, my immediate boss then at that point for East Midlands for RNIB, and I was doing street clutter at Loughborough and things like that. There was lots of different videos, and then I did a piece for Central News about shared space outside Jubilee Square. And the cameraman didn't get it, and he suddenly looked down at my feet and he saw that Kiki was in the road, one foot was on the pavement and the other foot was in the road. So I've done lots of different campaigns, including, as I say, shared space, e-scooters, and all sorts of things. But I've recently, through COVID, I did because everybody got their shielding letters in print, which I can't redo large print, can't do Braille, can't do nothing like that. But the reason I'm going to slightly go back again in a minute once I've told you this bit, also none of my hospital letters are in print and I can't read them either. But I know the procedures for actually doing a contrast eye CT scan. And I know you're not supposed to eat or drink 2 hours before, but if you're new to it, you would know you drink and eat and you wouldn't be able to have it done. I'll go back a bit now. In 2018, when I'd been... Oh, sorry, yeah, I've nearly done anyway. Anyways, it's the next bit's a bit boring anyway. But it is. It's sort of pushing it all together, if that makes sense. I thought what it was BBS, and it wasn't. I got bloating and everything, and Kiki told me that I got cancer. See why I jumped back. And I got 8 booklets in all print. So this was the other thing that was the forefront, because reason why during COVID I brought forward a digital review against the accessible information standard and putting all the stuff not in print, and I couldn't read it and I would have gone out and I would have got ill. At the minute, because the tactile paving is not right and there's no curbs, I've done that at a digital review, and the minute I'm doing the train strikes, it's also because they want to close ticket offices, and also if the ticket, you can't get the tickets, there's no assistance, there's no guards on the train, in a one-man train, you can't get off, you can't get on, so that will be not helpful. But since then I've retrained with a new dog, and it's just gone strength to strength, and I've done more mad things since then. About, was it 3 months ago, I walked on 600-degree hot flames, fire walked. And if you're visually impaired or blind, just don't think, yes, it is a struggle when you're younger if you've not got support or the help, but you can do stuff, but you just do it slower. You just do it a totally different way. You can still go on holiday. You can go out and have friends. You can have a life. You can go and have fun as much as you want. But you just got to find different ways of doing it and be careful and do it in groups and support and help each other and get that right information and the right support from BBS, which I'm very thankful for, thank you, and meeting all these wonderful people and having all support from my lovely friends. They know who they are, and all that sort of thing. But then I feel like with Kiki, it took me to one stage, but Nellie, it's another stage because she comes into the theatre with me. She sleeps through Rocky Horror, like we found out when we went to Blackpool for a week. She sleeps through Tina Turner. But she's the next chapter, she's the next thing, so I'm going to carry on doing. I said when I got a new guide dog, I'd find something else to do. There is limitations because of my chemo and everything. Can't do as much, and sometimes I feel tired, but I listen to my body. But you've got to. But there's still things out there you can do. There's still things you can try, and there's still hobbies you can do or work or whatever. Sometimes it's a struggle, but you've just got to think of another way of doing it. But also you can do it. Don't think you can't do it because you're visually impaired, but just have a go at it. And there's people like the instructors for the firewalk. He'd done countless people of visually impaired and blind people, and they want to help people and they want to learn off you if you go on holiday in hotels and all sorts. So just go out there and try it. And it took me a while to get my voice. It took me a while to get me independence and whatever. But I'm making up for them teenage and 20s years. But hey ho, you might as well make have fun while you're at it. The only downside is she's now gone to sleep and she's comatose. I've just got to try and wake her up now. This one likes to sleep a lot like a dormouse. Nellie.
So Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your inspirational story.
Thank you.